November 24th, 1971, the eve of Thanksgiving. Rain falls steadily over Portland International Airport as travelers rush toward warm family tables across America. Among them, a quiet man in a dark business suit moves without hurry. No one notices him. No one remembers anything unusual. He boards an ordinary commercial flight, settles into his seat, and orders a drink. Then, somewhere above the Pacific Northwest, he hands a flight attendant a folded note. She ignores it at first, slipping it into her purse. Then he leans close and calmly whispers that he has a bomb. Within hours, this unremarkable stranger will collect $200,000 in cash, demand 4 parachutes, release every single passenger, completely unharmed, and disappear forever into a stormy night sky. More than 50 years later, the world is still asking the same question. Who exactly was the man the world came to call D.B. Cooper? It is November 24th, 1971, and across the United States, America is preparing for Thanksgiving. Millions of travelers fill airports from coast to coast, rushing home to families, carrying luggage, and moving through terminals without a second thought about the strangers around them. At Portland International Airport, at around 2 in the afternoon, a calm and well-dressed man in his mid-40s quietly approaches the ticket counter. He wears a dark business suit, a crisp white shirt, and a black clip-on tie. In his hand, he carries a simple briefcase. Without hesitation, he purchases a one-way ticket under the name Dan Cooper. Not D.B. Cooper, a name that would later emerge from a newspaper reporting error, paying exactly $20 in cash. No one looks twice at him. No one asks questions. To every person in that terminal, he is just another ordinary traveler on an ordinary afternoon. Investigators later interviewed dozens of witnesses, and their accounts were remarkably consistent. Every single person described the same man: calm, polite, soft-spoken, and entirely professional. Nothing about him suggested danger. Nothing suggested desperation. He selected seat 18C, positioned near the rear of the aircraft, a choice that investigators would later examine very carefully. He ordered a bourbon and soda, lit a cigarette, and sat quietly as the remaining passengers boarded and settled into their seats. At 2:50 in the afternoon, Northwest Orient Flight 305 departed Portland International Airport carrying 36 passengers and 6 crew members bound for Seattle. The flight was short, routine, and completely unremarkable to everyone aboard. No one in that cabin had any reason to suspect that the composed businessman sitting near the rear was carrying something far more dangerous than a briefcase. One of the boldest hijackings in aviation history had already quietly begun. About 30 minutes after takeoff, flight attendant Florence Schaffner notices the businessman in seat 18C motioning toward her. He extends a folded note in her direction. Assuming it contains a phone number, something flight attendants occasionally received from passengers, she slips it into her purse without a second glance. Then the man leans slightly toward her and speaks in a calm, unhurried voice. He tells her she had better look at that note because he has a bomb. Schaffner opens it immediately and reads a handwritten message confirming the threat in clear, deliberate terms. Without raising his voice or showing any agitation, he instructs her to sit beside him. She complies, keeping her composure remarkably steady. Just a few rows away, passengers continue flipping through their newspapers, sipping their drinks, completely unaware that a hijacking is already quietly underway around them. The man opens his briefcase just enough for Schaffner to glimpse what appear to be red, cylindrical objects connected by wires and a battery. Whether the device was real has never been conclusively established, but that brief glimpse is enough. Schaffner is convinced the threat is serious, and she remains composed, following his instructions without alerting the cabin. Without raising his voice even slightly, The man calmly lists exactly what he wants: $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle upon landing. Schaffner relays the demands to the flight deck. Within minutes, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, local police, Northwest Orient Airlines, and federal aviation authorities are all scrambling to coordinate a response. Yet inside the cabin, almost nothing changes. Passengers continue sipping coffee, flipping through magazines, and chatting quietly, completely unaware that the flight they boarded for a routine Thanksgiving journey has just become a federal crisis unfolding at 30,000 feet. As the Boeing 727 cuts through heavy rain towards Seattle, the machinery of law enforcement shifts into high gear. Federal Bureau of Investigation records show authorities move immediately to assemble the ransom: $200,000 in $20 bills. Before a single note leaves official hands, every serial number is carefully photographed and recorded, creating a paper trail investigators hope will one day surface. Alongside the cash, 4 parachutes are gathered and prepared for delivery. That specific number has fascinated researchers for decades. Cooper did not ask for 1 parachute, he asked for 4. The reasoning, many analysts believe, was deliberately calculated. If authorities suspected he might force a crew member to jump alongside him, they could not risk sabotaging the equipment. Whether Cooper genuinely intended to take a hostage or simply use the request as insurance against tampered gear remains uncertain. Either way, the detail reveals something important. Whoever this man was, he had thought this through long before boarding Flight 305. As Flight 305 circles Seattle, time moves slowly inside the cabin. Most passengers remain completely unaware of the crisis unfolding around them. Flight attendants continue serving drinks with practiced calm, maintaining the illusion of a routine flight. Cooper himself remains remarkably composed throughout, ordering another bourbon and soda and even paying for his drinks. A small but striking detail that would fascinate investigators for years to come. It suggested a man entirely in control of his emotions, perhaps even enjoying the moment. At approximately 5:39 in the evening, the aircraft finally lands at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, immediately surrounded by police vehicles, floodlights, and Federal Bureau of Investigation agents watching carefully from a distance. A Northwest Orient Airlines employee delivers the ransom money and parachutes exactly as demanded without incident. Then Cooper makes a decision that genuinely surprises everyone monitoring the situation. He releases all 36 passengers completely unharmed, asking nothing further in return. With the passengers safely released, Cooper turns his attention to the crew. He instructs the pilots to fly toward Mexico City, but the crew explains clearly that the Boeing 727 simply does not have the fuel range to make that journey. After some discussion, a revised flight plan is agreed upon. The aircraft will fly south at approximately 10,000 feet at a deliberately slow airspeed, with the landing gear partially deployed and the wing flaps set at 15 degrees. These are not random requests. Investigators immediately recognize the unusual technical precision behind each instruction. For decades, researchers debate whether these details reveal military parachuting experience, deep aviation knowledge, or simply extraordinary preparation made long before boarding. The specifications suggest someone who understood exactly what conditions a parachutist would need to survive a jump. Before the engines spool up again, Cooper instructs all flight attendants to remain inside the cockpit. At 7:40 in the evening, Flight 305 departs Seattle once more. At approximately 8:00 in the evening, warning lights in the cockpit suddenly illuminate, indicating movement at the rear stairway. The crew feels a noticeable upward shift in the aircraft's tail. No one moves to investigate. Investigators later conclude Cooper most likely exited the aircraft around 8:13 in the evening, carrying the ransom money and at least one parachute, disappearing into complete darkness above the dense forests of Washington state. No one witnessed the jump. No cameras captured it. No radio transmission followed. The skies outside were stormy, temperatures were freezing, and visibility was nearly zero. When Flight 305 finally lands in Reno, Nevada, the rear stairway is found open, and Cooper is simply gone. Left behind are only a black clip-on tie, several cigarette butts, and a handful of other small items. The greatest manhunt in Federal Bureau of Investigation history is about to begin. As Flight 305 rolls to a stop in Reno, FBI agents rush aboard before the engines fully power down. Every inch of the cabin is treated as a crime scene. Investigators photograph Seat 18C with careful precision, recovering what little Cooper left behind: a black clip-on tie, a tie clip, and 8 cigarette butts. At the time, few imagined just how significant those cigarette butts might one day become. Tragically, according to the FBI, they were later lost before modern DNA testing technology became available. It remains one of the most frustrating and heartbreaking moments in the entire investigation. Had those cigarette butts survived, forensic science might have identified Cooper decades ago, potentially closing one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. The tie, however, was carefully preserved, and years later, that seemingly ordinary piece of fabric would yield something investigators never expected: surprising scientific secrets hidden deep within its fibers. Modern microscopic analysis of that black clip-on tie revealed something extraordinary. Tiny metallic particles, including titanium and other rare materials, were found deeply embedded within the fabric. Forensic researchers concluded that Cooper likely worked in an advanced industrial or aerospace-related environment, someone familiar with high-tech manufacturing long before such materials became common. Meanwhile, the Federal Bureau of Investigation officially launched Operation Norjack, short for Northwest Hijacking, one of the longest and most resource-intensive investigations in Bureau history. Thousands of military personnel, National Guard troops, Federal Bureau of Investigation agents, tracking dogs, helicopters, and volunteer searchers were deployed across Washington state. But the terrain fought back. Dense evergreen forests, steep mountain ridges, rapid rivers, and deep ravines made every search effort brutally difficult. Visibility was poor, ground conditions were dangerous, weeks turned into months. No body was recovered, no parachute was found, not a single dollar bill turned up. The forests had swallowed every trace of the man completely, leaving investigators with nothing but questions and a growing legend. Nearly 9 years after the hijacking, on February 10, 1980, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was digging in the sand along the Columbia River near a place called Tina Bar when he uncovered something extraordinary. Deteriorated bundles of $20 bills, partially buried and falling apart. Serial numbers confirmed the money-matched part of Cooper's ransom exactly, with nearly $5,800 recovered. The discovery electrified investigators across the country, but instead of solving the mystery, it created far more questions than answers. How did those bills reach that riverbank? Did Cooper bury them himself? Did flooding carry them downstream over the years? Did he die somewhere nearby? Researchers debated these questions for decades without ever reaching a conclusive explanation. Meanwhile, the Federal Bureau of Investigation investigated more than 1,000 suspects over the years: former military parachutists, pilots, engineers, and ordinary businessmen. Yet no one was ever conclusively identified as Cooper. Now let us examine the strongest suspects investigators have considered over the decades. Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. hijacked a Boeing 727 in 1972 using a remarkably similar method to Cooper's. However, the Federal Bureau of Investigation concluded that meaningful differences in physical appearance and surrounding circumstances made it unlikely he was the same man. Kenneth Christiansen, a Northwest Orient Airlines employee and former paratrooper, drew serious attention after his death when family members uncovered unusual financial circumstances, yet no conclusive physical evidence ever connected him directly to the hijacking. Robert Rackstraw, a decorated Vietnam veteran, licensed pilot, experienced parachutist, and explosives expert, generated the greatest media attention of all the suspects. Independent investigators argued his extraordinary background fit the crime remarkably well. Despite years of renewed scrutiny and persistent media coverage, the Federal Bureau of Investigation never formally established Rackstraw as Cooper, and he consistently and firmly denied any involvement until his death in 2019. The metallic particles recovered from Cooper's black clip-on tie narrowed the possibilities considerably, pointing towards someone with connections to advanced industrial or aerospace environments. Yet they never identified a single person. The buried ransom money discovered along the Columbia River raised more questions than it ever answered. How it arrived there remains genuinely unexplained decades later. The central debate over whether Cooper actually survived the jump remains completely unresolved. The conditions that night were brutal: freezing temperatures, heavy rain, dense forest, and total darkness below. Yet no body was ever recovered, no parachute was ever confirmed, and no death scene was ever established. Some researchers argue Cooper may have been far more experienced and prepared than investigators initially believed, and may have simply walked quietly out of the wilderness and disappeared forever. In 2016, the Federal Bureau of Investigation officially suspended active investigative resources devoted to the case, carefully preserving all remaining evidence for any credible future leads, but never once declaring the mystery solved. On November 24, 1971, a man walked into an airport carrying nothing but a briefcase, obtained $200,000, commandeered an aircraft, and vanished into one of the darkest storms the Pacific Northwest had ever seen. He harmed no passengers, never revealed his identity, and if he survived, carried his secret to the grave. More than 50 years later, the name D.B. Cooper is recognized around the world, yet ironically, it was never even the name he actually used. One quiet man, one folded note, one stormy night, and an entire nation still searching for answers. So what do you think happened? Did he survive that jump? Was he someone hiding in plain sight all along? Drop your theories in the comments below, Yanis. We read every single one. Thank you for watching until the very end. Remember, every mystery has a story, and the search for truth never ends.